All right.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. This is the January meeting of the Mountain Community Capital Fund. Um, a lot of good stuff to share today while we're in this in between kind of limbo between receiving funds to hand out or to guarantee more loans for our lenders. So on today's agenda, it's pretty light. We're going to use the much of the allotted time to review our committee procedures and discuss the credit underwriting committee to make sure that we are fully in compliance. And now that we're about on the precipice of receiving so much funding, it's important that our committee is well versed on our obligations and the limits of our fund and our responsibilities. Before we jump in, I'd like to ask to go around the Google Meet if folks could introduce themselves and if they're a voting member in the organization and if you have a role. I'm trying to see all the participants though. How do I get here? Whiteboard, change layout, quarter settings. Oh, that's the button over there with the where it says show everyone. Not that hard, folks. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan. Work at Venture Asheville. I'm a county appointee and voting member and the chairman of this committee. And if it's all right with y'all, to make it easy, I'm just going to call names out in order, just so order I see them on my screen. So we're playing popcorn. So next on my screen is Angelica Driver.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica Driver. I work as the Business Services Administrator in the City of Asheville's Community and Economic Development Department. I'm not a voting member. I am a staff liaison.
Thank you. And you're also playing the role of note taker, secretary in this meeting. Thank you for that.
I am. Thanks.
Great. Carl, I have you next.
Hi, I'm Carl Alguire, and I am a volunteer and voting board member.
And you're a city appointee, is that right? Or county? No,
yes,
you're city.
I'm one or the other. I'm never quite sure.
I believe you are city, but
I'm going to try to remember that. I'm the city guy. All right.
I believe you're city. Okay. Next on my list is Frank McGowan.
Hello, Frank McGowan, City of Asheville Finance Department, and I'm an appointee and a voting member.
Very good. Thank you so much. Jesse Maxwell, we have you next.
Great. I'm Jesse Maxwell. I am from Self Help, one of the lenders on this program, and I am not a voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Kelly?
I am Kelly Foster from Mountain BizWorks. I work with Jocelyn Gonzalez. I'm not a voting member. I am the asset quality manager for the organization at Mountain BizWorks.
Very good. Glad to have you with us. Next is Maui Vang.
Hi, I'm Maui Vang, also a volunteer. I believe I'm a volunteer appointee and a voting member.
Excellent. Ricardo, we got your intro before, but if we could have it again now that we are live on the broadcast.
All right, thanks.
And you are city staff, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I'm here as city staff. I am joining the CAPE team as a communication specialist.
Fantastic. Really glad to have you with us and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next, Timothy Love.
Good afternoon, Tim Love, Vice Chair, Buncombe County Government, and a voting member.
Thank you so much, Tim. And Yaslin?
Yoselin Gonzalez, a small business lender with Mountain BizWorks, and I am a non-voting member.
Thank you so much. And that's everyone that I can see in front of me. If I missed anybody, would you please raise your hand or speak up? Okay, very good. Again, thank you all for being flexible with the time change regarding moving this meeting back a week. After this meeting, we'll back to our regular schedule, first Friday of the month at 9 a.m. So I want to make sure I have enough voting members because Rachel's not here, Dee's not here. So it's Tim, Frank, Carl, Maui, Jeffrey. So we're 5. So we have quorum. Okay, very good. I'm going to add an item to the agenda. I'm going to roll it right before Jesse's update on old businesses self-help credit contract update. We got word from Dogwood this week, so I'll give you that update at that time. Before we do, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from December's 2021 meeting. If you don't have that handy, I will throw that link in the chat for your, messed it up. I'll throw that link in the chat for your review. That was the meeting on December 3rd, chaired by Tim.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Frank. Second from Carl. Okay, so we'll ask, put our participants back up. Voting members, all in favor, if you could raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's unanimous. So that passes. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Carl. Okay, so I'm going to sneak in again on the agenda. I heard from Dogwood this week, and it was just so recent that I didn't have a chance to put in the agenda, that they are going to approve our request of $450,000 of additional risk capital as a guarantee in the program. When you take that in context, first of all, it's fantastic, and we're really thrilled. They mentioned that it aligns with the mission, and it's in percentage proportionality of the total request amount, or total operating amount they're happy with, and obviously the great alignment with the mission of Dogwood, and the great work our committee does. So if you take that 450, which matches the initial 450 investment from the city and the county, that's $900,000, and then with the 1.25 from the county, that takes our total guarantee fund, or our total MCCF potential in the risk capital to $2.15 million, which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, it's a pretty exceptional amount of funding with how this is really, because of ARPA, right? It's really just snowballed and grown so quickly. It's phenomenal. Really proud of this group, and
good
proud of
work.
the confidence that we earn from our track record, again, from our participating lenders, namely Mountain BizWorks leading the charge there. And then the remaining at request is with the city, which is being rolled into the Mountain BizWorks request. And so I believe early February, somebody from Mountain BizWorks will do a 2-minute presentation. That request is a couple things in there, but I believe $1 million as part of a larger request is earmarked for Mountain Community Capital Fund dollars. So if that comes in, we'll be looking at $3.15 million. For that reason, because we're looking at having so much funding come our way, it's important again to make sure we're in compliance. So before we get into the reviewing the committee procedures, I've asked Jesse to give us a quick update on the self-help credit contract that they are working out with the county to receive the $1.25 million.
Yeah, so we, good news, we're going to do it. So it's just cut to the fun stuff. No, so just for context, the original question was, because this is ARPA funding and it's a federal dollars, that it's a little different from just general fund money, that it would likely need to be tracked differently, and we would need to make sure that it's structured in a way such that we're not violating any general federal rules, and then how best to do that, whether it would be through having a loan or a grant for self-help to hold to then be used for the fund. And legal has looked through this. We've also talked to a couple of other folks, and it's actually, we're going to be able to do it pretty cleanly in terms of how the reporting. Well, I mean, the reporting requirements they shouldn't be passed on too much actually with this, but with having federal funding in a pot to be used for this, it should be pretty clean. The type of lending that we do out of this program perfectly aligns with the intent of the fund usage. Thanks, county and city, for approving it for this use. So we're just working on coming up with some specific language for that that we can all sign on to. The one potential caveat that we're still working out from an accounting perspective is the ARPA dollars may need to be held in a different account, just depending on a few things that we'll figure out. From the surface perspective, like, that's going to have zero impact on implementation or using. It would just be an accounting piece in the background, which we may also have to do with the city dollars. So Franco, we'll figure that out. But again, that doesn't that's a back end thing. That's not going to impact how we use the dollars or anything like that. So hoping to get a contract out in the next, or getting a contract figured out in the next couple of weeks so that we can then make some moves. Also, Yasleen, I'm well aware that you guys have a pipeline too of loans that you're hoping to move through sooner rather than later. So hopefully we can get to that. But sort of now that that's that update, moving into sort of what we talked about last week. And Jeff, I'll pause if you want to add. But we are going to need to revise the services and duties agreement prior to using any new funds. Because as it stands in the services and duties agreement, there's a dollar amount that's limiting the amount of lending that we can do. So we would just need to revise that, which is a perfect time to do that because then we can extend the term of the services and duties agreement so that we're not having to adjust and reapprove and do whatnot every year, which is where it is right now. And that, I think we can get that ready to show all of what those changes would be and get committee approval by the next meeting. And if not, share a lot of that over email prior. But I'll pause there. Yeah, Yasleen.
I was also reviewing the claim form, and I'm not sure if there's a finalized version, but I think at least the version that I had and the one that we have that we just received has still some notes in there. So I'm not sure if I have just an outdated version or if we never got around to actually making those changes on the form.
I don't know. I'll look in mine and see what I have. Maybe we can compare. I mean, the good news is we haven't had to use it yet.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, Tim.
And for the conversation with Jesse, I believe we've got a kind of a brainstorming call next Thursday. And so there is another consideration we'll need to kind of think through as it relates to the ARP funding. And specifically, it's about the timeline of expending the funds. And so just want to put that out there for you. That's going to be a hurdle for us to get over. We'll figure it out, but I think that's the biggest obstacle at this point.
I think, yes. I think if we do this in the form of a grant, as opposed to a 0% interest loan, and this is the one thing that Suzanne, the lawyer that's working with me on this, was like, I don't know quite yet. Don't say anything. I was like, I promise I won't say anything. So here I am saying something. Is that we think, or we're pretty sure that if it is in the form of a grant, then that can be considered fully expended on the county side, which will help because being actually dispersing funds in a 3 to 4 year timeline and committing to that, it could be an easy thing to do, but it's not something that I would personally feel comfortable committing to.
Understood.
But yeah, on the radar, and I thank you for bringing that up because I totally forgot about it.
And then one just side note, this is process, bureaucracy, but if, we change some of the details, grant versus loan, that could trigger the need to go through another county public hearing, which won't be that dramatic. It's just another hurdle, just to put it out there, but we can talk about that more.
Okay.
We're going to get it done, y'all.
Yeah, that's what I want to emphasize is that it's not a matter of if the ARPA funding will be received to be distributed to the entrepreneurs. It's a matter of how, and those details are being worked out. Great. And I imagine we'll be doing the song and dance again when the next hopefully at least one another injection of funding is going to happen.
The dog one should be pretty clean.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that one's
That's
because
federal
it's a
restriction.
private entity to the yeah, that's not.
And the other comment Jess was referring to is some of y'all may remember former chair Lynn Smith had to attend a county meeting to ask for an extension of MCCF as it was set to expire maybe 2018, and I think we're a year or two out of compliance at that point. And so, a question I have for Tim, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as a county representative, do you know when our current operating agreement is set to expire, and would it be possible to ask at the next time we do this for maybe a 5-year extension instead of a 12-month extension?
I don't know offhand. I forget, but I thought we asked for an extension to
I
be.
think we got 2 years. I don't think we got more than that.
I'm fairly certain that it has expired. It expired at the end of 2021, which is fine because we need to re-up and redo it anyway.
Right.
But extending it to match at least the term of the notes that we have would be ideal.
Yeah, it seems like an easy argument to make that with what is it going to be? The 450, 5 or 6 times the funding of the initial amount. We should expect a longer runway to distribute funds and therefore need a longer timeline. Okay, very good. Any other discussion here? Otherwise, we're going to return the time back to Jesse to pick up where we were in November as an overview of some of the committee procedures. Jesse, if you want to discuss the credit underwriting committee, I think that'd be appropriate in your time. In the new business, we're going to actually, look for some nominations of volunteers to put the committee together. But if you want to approach the kind of the overarching items that are worth being on top of mind for being in compliance as an operating committee.
Yeah, sure. So I can touch back on the credit underwriting committee, and then really where we left off was just talking about the underwriting agreement. So I think just talking about those two things briefly, and then we should be caught up in game for Q&A time. I'm also flagging that I did mention that I was going to look and see when the most recent services and duties expired and failed to find that document. So that's still on the to-do list.
I thought that was my responsibility to ask Rachel, who's not in the call today.
Oh, then I should have kept my mouth shut.
Because I don't know if it's Rachel under her scope of work, but I feel like she would know that just because Rachel is a encyclopedia of knowledge.
She is. So let me see if I can not botch this after however many years of swap. Sorry, I'm messing things up. Okay, I can do this. Share my screen. Send. And then hold, please. Okay. So I can't see anybody, but I'm assuming that you're still there. So just pulling back up the credit underwriting committee, this is pulled from the services and duties agreement. So just to review, it would be 5 members of out of the operating committee would constitute the credit underwriting committee, who have some slightly more specific responsibilities, but it's more around like loan monitoring. So loans over 70,000 would require approval from the credit underwriting committee before they can be used for the fund.
Excuse me, Jesse.
Yes.
We're only seeing your presentation of the meet and not the document.
You need to select one of the tabs. We see your desktop, I believe.
Oh, great.
Or we're seeing the meet tab. So if you would tab over to one of those PDFs.
Meet Google.
Are you still presenting just in the top of your browser? We can see your whole browser in the toolbar. Selecting one of those tabs.
Hey, so does my desktop and browser make anybody really anxious? Because
we just see the browser.
Okay.
Less tabs than I have.
Yeah. I had to restart my computer this morning.
Okay, you win. Give up.
Okay. Just for simplicity's sake. So loans 50 to 70 would be reviewed by the credit underwriting committee on a periodic basis after closing. And then participating lenders, if there is a loss and they want to file for to reimbursement, that request has to be made to the credit underwriting committee, who then reviews the information and says, oh yeah, okay, sure, you can take money and be made whole, or let's look at this a little more closely. So when Yasleen was mentioning the claim form, that's what she meant. That's the form that would be submitted to the credit underwriting committee. So generally speaking, the credit underwriting committee is taking a lot of the specific review of loans to just that committee, as opposed to the entire operating committee. And then for additional context, I learned at the last session that Rachel shared was that the reason that we didn't have a designated credit underwriting committee to begin with because the operating committee was small enough such that the Venn diagram of overlap would be almost everyone would have to be part of the credit underwriting committee. The advantage of having a credit underwriting committee is that information that is really sensitive about certain loans and borrowers can be shared among more operating committee members, and they can have those conversations.
So you beat me to 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one I want to ask and make sure we're clear on is, well, taking a step back, our lenders can lend out, I thought it was under $50,000, right, without going to the credit underwriting committee. Anything 50 to 70 needs approval from a credit underwriting committee, which is a subcommittee. No?
Anything over 70 needs approval. 50 to 70 can be monitored post-closing.
So what's the max? Is there a max now? I know there was at one point we changed from like 35 to 50 was the limit without approval. So is there a max on the loans?
So
the max is 70.
There's a max guarantee of $75,000 for this program. The loans that are over $70,000 need to be approved by the credit underwriting committee before the guarantee can be used.
Okay, so for example, the time Mountain BizWorks did $1 million loan, but they came to us to guarantee the 50 or 70,000 of it. Was that the time they would contact or go to the credit underwriting committee? Is that an example?
Mm-hmm.
Does that jive with you, Yasleen?
Yeah, but we didn't do the bigger loan.
Right,
We
so-
only did, but yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand the hypothetical situation.
Right. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so my question is, can we confirm that the credit underwriting committee would not be meeting in open session so they could discuss more sensitive details around the loans?
That is how that underwriting committee operates in other sort of revolving loan loan loss reserve structures. So I would say yes, but I'm not the city or the county.
I believe we had this conversation before, and I'm not sure if it was Rachel said that we could not do that. We had to have a public meeting. So we could not have any private meetings. So that's why we could not do the underwriting committee. So decided to
Yep. So those are the 2 reasons why we're technically out of compliance. Is that one, the complexity of discussing these things in open session, and 2, number-wise, it's every voting member but one to be on the underwriting committee. But if I have the numbers right in my head, it's both city and both county participants. So that's Tim and Rachel, Frank and Nikki, and then 3 of the 4 appointees. Is that the exact right number? Or is it 1 of each from city, 1 of each from county, then 3 of the 4 appointees? You guys following me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was the combo, like you said, Jeff. I haven't done the math, but it was basically the same number of folks, just about. And our county legal opinion was that there's no reason for us to go in a closed session for any of these topics, and unless there might be another legal opinion out there, but that was the advice we got. So,
all right. So given the meetings are public anyways, and given that it's all but one person from the voting members, that's why it was rolled into, but not a subcommittee of voters on our monthly meeting.
Yep.
Okay, understood. And we'll come back to this in the last part of our agenda. So that's good context for the next part of the discussion. Jesse, other items in committee procedures you want to discuss?
Well, I guess just in the interest of time, so there are underwriting guidelines and procedures that we shared out to put everyone on the spot so that I don't just read through this on my screen. Does anyone have any questions about those? I can give just a general overview.
And I'll say one more thing, Jesse, sorry to keep interrupting you,
No.
is there was no suggestions of changes or protocol changes. Rather, this is shared information to make sure we're in compliance.
Yes. So there was, at the start of the fund, there were underwriting procedures, or really underwriting guidelines. And I thought I had them pulled up. Maybe I didn't. Here we go. I'm not sharing my screen right now, but what it goes through is like, parameters for loan terms, which is basically saying that the term of the loan is going to line up with the use of the loan within reasonable means. So you wouldn't do a working capital loan for 15 years. And all of the participating lenders agreed, like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. The loan pricing, it outlines basically lenders would use their current pricing and fees. The only difference would be there would also be an additional 1% loan loss reserve fee that would be charged, and that money will go back into the fund, which is calculated at closing. There's underwriting tips around. Basically, it's saying, the fund, we would prefer to do businesses that have been in business for 12 months or longer. If they've been in business for less than that, then we need to monitor and make sure that no more than 50% of all the loans, preferably no more than 1/3 of all the loans, are startups, which is something that we'll add to the quarterly report. It talks through, we're going to be looking for strong management experience. We're going to be looking to, basically it says, there's a few restricted businesses, like speculative real estate is not something we can lend to, pyramid sales, illegal activities, gambling, nonprofits. Let's see. And then it talks about looking at some reasonable financial trends. And then there's some collateral requirements where basically it says, you need to take as much collateral as you can. You can't just use this fund to be the collateral, and so that you don't have to take other collateral unless like there's a good reason not to take collateral, and it outlines some of those reasons. Yeah, Carl.
Thank you. I just did have a question. First of all, I wanted to say a shout out to Jessie. She met with Maui and I over the last month and really helped me better understand sort of our role here and ways to proceed. So I appreciate that. And that time of business where it says for most small business, 12 months minimum. So do we consider any business that comes to us a startup until they've made 12 months of payments? Or they've been in business for 12 months or more?
Yeah, they've been in business for 12 months or more.
And so anybody who
cash flow.
Anybody who hasn't been in business for 12 months, are they disqualified?
No, they're not disqualified. Okay. They're just designated as startup, which means there's slightly stricter underwriting requirements.
Okay.
And we would want to make sure that of all of the loans that we have with Mountain Community Capital Fund, no more than 35 to 50% of them are for startups.
And we
so just to say that the portfolio isn't like only for startups, because startups are inherently higher risk, and that would help balance that out. The thing that we need to do behind the scenes for our quarterly reports is, one, monitor the number of startups in the fund, and then as they age out, keep that number live and active.
Yeah, that's what I wondered from the material, that it didn't seem like we had the knowledge of their length of business status
that we've been presenting.
Yes.
Not beyond what they were at the time of closing. So that is something that needs to be.
And then one
factored
other
into the
question, some that I cannot now find, but there was something about a 1% holdback that came back to MCCF
Mhm.
for.
The
Could you
guarantee
explain
fee.
that to me? I didn't understand that.
Yeah. So at closing, 1% of the loan would be the borrower would have to pay that also. Usually that's, and Yasleen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for what self-help does is we just wrap that into the loan amount. And those dollars go back into the loan fund. So it's a guarantee fee to help cover the cost of administration.
It's just an extra fee.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. And just on that note, Jesse, have you
Yes.
received those? Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. I meant to share that. We've been out on COVID quarantine, so I've not been able to get in yet. But yes,
No worries.
accounted for, ready to cash.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Carl, those are really good questions. Thank you. Cool. So basically and again, can share that out, but the underwriting is Mountain Community or Mountain BizWorks and Self-Help and Carolina Small Business all saying, we agree to adhere to these general underwriting parameters, which, shocker, are not that far away from what we would actually do normally without the fund. And so just as a we're all playing the same game by the same rules. So that's, and if it is up to the operating committee to review these underwriting parameters on an occasional basis, and if there's a reason to adjust or change or add, that is within y'all's jurisdiction. Heidi.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. And yeah, it's acknowledged. Voting member, city appointee Dee Williams has joined us. Dee, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I do apologize. I was driving and from one meeting to the other, and I do apologize humbly. Thank you so much for letting me in.
No apologies necessary. We understand with the changing the meeting time this week. We're thankful you could join us.
Thank you.
Okay, Jesse, any other, I guess, let me put it back to everyone else. Any other questions about overall committee procedures, guidelines, anything under the sun? Otherwise, we can discuss the credit underwriting committee. And so I guess the call to action here, the action item coming out of this old business item is that we need to update the operating procedures as far as loan amounts and term length to present back to the city and the county. Okay. All right, before I move on, Dee, I want to share with you, as I shared at the beginning of the meeting, that Dogwood informed us just yesterday that they'll be funding the fund with $450,000 uses extra capital, bringing our total fund amount to $2.15 million, which is a really exceptional amount. Yeah. Okay, so here's, if we can move on to any other business before moving on to credit underwriting committee.
I'm just going to flag that because service and dues agreement is coming up for reading, I'm keeping a list of things that we need to address and change that we can work on. One being the amount of money in the pool and therefore the leverage. And I'm confirming that we're agreeing that we're going to keep the 1-to-1 leverage.
That was just popping in my head. It's something our committee has talked about over the years is should we adjust the guarantee amount? And perhaps now that we're looking at it going up and potentially to $3.15 million is now a time to have that discussion.
I would say no, but
okay.
I'm not an operator.
Is your inclination to say no and in the perspective of a lender and trying to minimize risk? Or is there another reason I should be aware of?
That's a great question. So two perspectives. Yes, I think, yes, minimizing risk, but also from a committee perspective and from a fund perspective, we're still 2 years old, and have, with fingers crossed, getting all this huge influx of dollars, we won't feel the strain of having a limited number of loans to do. And so can give the fund time to mature a little bit, see how our fund performance is, see how the loans are doing. And then if we creep up to a point where it's like, oh, we can't do any more loans unless we get more money or agree to leverage it, then I think that's when a little bit before that point, that would be the time to have that conversation so that we have a little bit more of a feel for what that risk would actually be. I mean, I have a pretty good guess and we could look down that road, but.
Do you have a hand up?
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. One of the things that I think about is what is the purpose of this loan pool? The purpose, even with my practice, is to graduate folks to borrow money from traditional lenders, I would hope. I don't think the point is to see how many dollars we can lend to businesses per se, especially viable businesses, but to get those businesses into a status of viability. And so the whole point is to graduate them to more traditional lenders, if you will. So I would say that we need to keep the leverage amounts the same as they are for that specific reason. We don't want to be the lender of record all the time. We hopefully want to graduate these firms. That's just my input. Thanks.
I think that's a great perspective. I'll share that at the county hearings, and I believe the ARPA application, the follow-up questions all circled around this idea of, is there better ways to, not better ways, there are alternative ways to the leverage amount. But I think Jesse and Dee, you both have presented. Okay, so then at the next meeting in February, would we be reviewing as a committee? I'm sorry, I see a bunch of hands up, so I'll pull back my action item. Yasleen or Tim, I'm not sure who had their hand up first.
Well, I was just going to comment on that same conversation about lowering the percentage on the guarantee. I mean, we're still coming out of a pandemic from a lender perspective. Mm-hmm. I think, like Jesse said, the fund is still very young, and we're still seeing these borrowers come out of borrowing, disaster lending, and going through all of that. So don't think it's the right time to lower that. So
thank you.
Yeah, I was going to chime in. So the discussion at the commission hearing about when this money was allocated, raised a lot of these questions, and I think the determination was made based on the existing terms, so the existing leverage amount. So I think I'm comfortable with that as a county rep, knowing where our commission stood on it. I think the emphasis from commission isn't about percentages. It's just making sure that we're stretching the dollars and getting as much benefit as we can. So as long as this group is thinking about that, how to reach the most people and help them graduate, or just help them, with anything, that's all we're trying to accomplish. So we can revisit in the future, especially as things hopefully settle with the pandemic and other things, but I'm comfortable where we are.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like to me the action item coming out of all the review of the committee procedures is that at the next meeting in February, we would present, maybe we can put it into a Google Doc and highlight changes to suggest. Jesse, would that make sense?
Yeah.
And
sure.
we're not talking about anything really formulaic. It's about, timeline of extinction or expiration and pretty minor updates, nothing core to the operating of the fund.
Yeah, there will be sorry, now that I'm thinking about this, the other adjustment that we would need to make would be around the language of the dollars in the fund, because we are getting a grant coming in, and because we still have yet to determine whether the ARPA funding would come in as a loan or a grant or forgivable loan or whatever. We just need to update that language, because right now the language only reflects notes. So in order to, incorporate dogwood funds and any other funds, and then looking down the road for when other people want to give us money.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
just
right.
have to adjust that language a little bit. But again, that's a technicality.
Okay, great. I think, but would that make sense, committee as a whole, to throw this into a Google Doc with highlighted changes to review in one shot?
Yes.
Okay. And Jesse, you and I can connect offline to put those together. Vice Chair Love, I see you have a hand up.
Yep. I would love it to, during this process, we could establish a shared site where all of these documents can live forever. I know, yeah, it's we've been chasing our tails for a while on this, and I don't care where it's hosted, but just so we all know that this is the latest agreement. Here's the latest claims agreement form, all that stuff, because we spent a lot of time talking about that. So if we could get a commitment to host that either on the existing city page or wherever it is, that'd be awesome. Please.
Yeah, there's nothing confidential that we'd be sharing, right? So it's operating. So Angelica, is it possible to upload files to our MCCF page on the city's Business Inclusion Office page?
We could do that. Anything, like you said, that doesn't include private information. We can also attach different, like if you are on the committee page on the city website, there's a table that says agenda and documents, and I can put documents associated with particular meetings into that public drive folder, so those can be viewed. But we can also look at a more central repository for all of the documents if you like.
That's actually what I had in mind, that page with the agenda and minutes. Would that work for everyone else? Seeing nods, thumbs up. Okay. Angelica, if that's okay with you, protocol here would be just me emailing you the attachment.
I'll put it in there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
As long as it's a PDF, that tends to work best.
Easy to do. Any other comments on this section? All right. So let me rephrase the juncture we're at with the credit underwriting committee, so we're all on the same page. And then I'm going to pitch a suggestion, and you all feel free to shoot it down or amend it. But let me get the ball rolling with an idea. So the credit underwriting committee, I believe, is one of the two city staff that are on the board, one voting members, one of the two county staff on the board that are voting members, and then 3 of the 4 appointees, which would be myself, Maui, Dee, and Carl. And the role of the credit underwriting committee is to review loans $50,000 to $70,000 retroactively and approve loans over $75,000. I'm looking for a nod of approval from Jesse or Yasmin if I encapsulated that right.
The current language has over $70,000, which
That's what I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, $70,000. So that's the role. And the reason we hadn't done that is that due to it being an open session and being all but 3 voting members, it made sense to have the operating committee act as a credit underwriting committee. We're not technically in compliance, and as more and more loans come in, we need to be tightening the ship here a little bit. So what I don't know if this is possible. I think it is. If we could ask for volunteers, again, 1 from the city, 1 from the county, 3 of the 4 voting members, include it as an agenda item. So for example, if our agenda says agenda, old business, new business, could we add a credit underwriting committee and essentially hold their meeting within our current meeting? And at that point, if you're not one of those 5 members on the credit underwriting committee, you would essentially be a public observer. You would not have a role. You would not be able to participate in the meeting until public comment at the very end. Like, could we do like something like that? Angelica, Tim, is this possible? Frank, maybe you would know, to hold a meeting within a meeting? Like, would it need to be called to order, or could it just say at this point the credit underwriting committee will do their part, and we all act as observers for a few minutes. Is that possible?
I don't know the answer. I've been wondering the exact same thing.
Okay.
I would also have to check on that.
Because, for example, I think it would be just kind of a headache, for example, if we said, okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting, everyone in 2 minutes, log back on the link, and we're going to do this again, but be a credit underwriting committee. I think it would just be smooth, more efficient to have it as one rolling through. Who would we contact to see? Well, first let me ask if that was possible. Would anybody be against that, or would that seem like an efficient way to run the underwriting committee?
I think,
I like it.
yeah, I think if you can streamline it like that, it makes sense. The question I would ask to the group is, do we in fact need this additional structure? Because if we're revising this agreement, maybe one of the revisions could be the removal of this committee if it's not a necessity. If we view it as important, I get it. Let's do it. And we need to be compliant with whatever is in the agreement. But if it doesn't truly add value, then should we just nix it all together and not create a new body within a body? Just a thought. Y'all tell me that.
So if I hear you right, Tim, you're saying, could we just move those responsibilities under the full operating committee?
Yes. I think it would make a lot of sense to have this type of committee if in fact it was, like a closed session. Like I could see the value there, then you like really like dig in deep. But we're never going to get that buy-in legally, at least from my lawyer. So, which is probably right. Most business should be public. So that's right.
I do agree with Tim. If it's not needed, then maybe we should consider just not having one.
It certainly feels clunky if we, if it's not really adding any value.
Okay. D, please.
Thank you. Basically, we've all been operating anyway as a credit operating committee. We all had discussion. So I would say if we can do it to expedite, why not? If we don't, we probably have to go through the process of omitting somebody. And it's such a small group. I think there may be one additional person over that limit, but certainly we all have been functioning like that. So I would say to just go ahead with what we've been doing and do away with that formalized credit underwriting committee. Usually those underwriting committees are at banks anyway, and those sessions are not open to the public anyway. And I think, I don't know, I just feel like we're operating pretty well without it. So to nix it if we can. Thanks.
I'll share, my plan D was to get the 4 of us in a room and play musical chairs and have one chair less. And that's how we're going to decide who was off the committee. I like your idea better. Carl and Maui, I want to make sure you both have a chance to jump into the conversation. How you feel about this? Yes, Maui, please. See your hand up.
Say just like one quick line. The only potential advantage that I could see with doing that subcommittee, whether like nested within this committee or separately, is possibly it could streamline that a little bit more. Even if you're going from 8 people down to 5, I haven't been on this committee all that long, but I can imagine if we had a day where there were like 3 loan, proposals, and we all had to go round robin for each of those, maybe just shrinking that pool a little bit and having some sort of rotation in place where it's not like the 5 people are just the same 5 people for years and years. I think might make that process a little bit more efficient.
Okay, so just so you're aware of how the public meetings work, is it still requires 10 days of notice plus sending the agenda out and the minutes posted online. So that was one of the reasons why we had moved it into the operating committee previously. Just to share some context as to the historical decision making there. But I can see the value in having, that team move things off. Carl, you have a hand up?
I just wondered if, given the restrictions on information on a public meeting, if a separate committee might allow for more direct questions to be answered if need be, or, in some way circumventing the challenge of identifying too much detail about a prospective loan.
So if I understand it right, it's that's essentially being in a closed session and a non-starter for our group. Is that right, Tim?
Oh,
Frank,
because all meetings have to be public. Okay,
right.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and as Jesse's shared that in other communities that have the same idea of a fund, they take their credit underwriting committee to closed session, so they can get as nitty gritty as you're describing.
Yep. And our legal has, if you use closed session, there's like 3 ways you can do it in the statute, and personnel matter, legal matter, and very specific economic development matter. And so that's kind of been the driver there, but other folks find other ways to do things. So
D, your hand's up. Is that from before? Do you have something you want to add? Okay. Very good. Okay, well, I can follow up. I'm trying to think where we go to see. We talked to Tim, we talked to legal at the county regarding, is it possible to even move it under the operating committee? That seems like where the majority of us are leaning, is to kind of, as Tim suggested, essentially delete the committee and roll the responsibilities under the operating committee.
if that's something, I'd be glad to float it with my legal. I'm certain they would be comfortable with it, since it's just a change to the agreement. But that's if that makes sense to the group.
So in Maui, you were the one bringing the position of keeping them as a separate underwriting committee. Does anybody support that idea or want to add another perspective to Maui's side? And I appreciate you, Maui, being the sharing another side of the argument here. Okay, well, I'll take the silence as we have some fact finding to do. So Tim, let's run down and see what's possible. And we can update the committee as to what our options are at the next meeting. Does that work for everyone? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, this again is a rather short meeting, given we have not received the loan capital yet, or Self-Help hasn't received it for the risk capital for our partners. At this time, if there is anyone on the line for public comment, you have 3 minutes, I believe, to say whatever you want. Angelica, is there anybody in queue for public comment?
We do not have anyone on the queue.
One day we will, and it's going to be a treat for all of us. I can't wait. Well, I don't have anything else to add. Any other business, anything else anybody wants to mention? We're ending 35 minutes early on a Friday. I think that's a good thing. But if anybody has anything else they want to add or jump in, now's your chance. Otherwise, we're going to adjourn this thing.
Jeff, I was just going to say, are congratulations in order for you?
Yes, we have an 8-week-old little girl.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Out for the last
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Her name is Madeline Susan. She got her 2-month shots today, so she's a little cranky, but she's eating well and sleeping well. And Danielle, my wife, is recovering very well, and very thankful. Yeah, she was born the week before, or the Friday before Thanksgiving. So had a lot of family here in November and December, and we're finally easing into our routine. Yeah, thank you, Frank.
You bet.
Yeah, Angelica, you have a hand up?
Yes. I wanted to announce that Rosanna Mulcahy, who was our staff liaison, our business inclusion manager with the city, has taken another position with the National League of Cities, and today is her last day. She's in meetings all day, but sent me to wish you all the best and thank you for all your hard work.
Well, congratulations to Rosanna as well. If you could relay our thanks to her for her time and energy to really, she's big spearheading this initiative forward. So send her our thanks.
I will. Thank you.
All right, with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. I just went to Trader Joe's. It's a madhouse. Good luck with the milk sandwiches this weekend, and I hope you all have some fun.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Stay safe.
Thanks,
Bye, y'all.
everybody.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.